Musical composition is a skill which requires years of practice, feedback, and improvement. But hear me out. How about I make a crude algorithm which applies basic math and chord progression to do it for me? So about at least a year ago, I started trying to make precisely this. I don't really remember what I did though, so I need to review 8 hours and 20 minutes of footage where all I do is slowly type out this mess of a code base. Let me give you a rundown of what I can grasp from it by skimming through the footage. Although before that, I just want to show the concept sketch I have made already. Okay, let's hope that it turns out less horrible when it's actually implemented than this, so let's get straight to the rundown. I set up my project in WebStorm, whilst also having IntelliJ and 2 browsers open, still computer user right here. Copy my CSS from a previous project and implement P5.js. First a helper for a rounded box, then for a smooth and non-smooth bar slider, refactoring the code base, and it's time for the buttons. I start with text, add some fonts, I make the track settings area, I render the list of tracks, and start rendering actual track settings in the corresponding box. I do some graphic design for the play, pause, and restart buttons, a status whether it's playing, and try to fix the layout for other aspect ratios. Now after looking through the footage and taking another look at the code base, I can honestly tell my past self that I'm impressed at how horrible this is. I'm by no means a great programmer with expert knowledge about how good extensible and maintainable code looks like, but this is just beyond comprehension. From this fighter jet of an if statement, to repeated and cryptic math, to unhinged naming conventions, to useless documentation that barely deserves to be called such, to this nightmare of a function. This code should be sent straight to /dev/null. Considering there seems to be no useful code in here at all, I guess it's time for a full rewrite. Before I cover doing this, however, I would like to take a moment to discuss what I have actually learned since then and how the rewrite would benefit from this. The first thing I have learned since then is that nested if statements are bad. On the topic of why this is, there are likely more than a dozen different forum threads and Medium articles. However, what I have taken from them are 2 primary points. The first is that with nested if statements, debugging becomes hell, because you need to reread and comprehend their contents again and again. And for the second reason is that, in a similar vein, if you were to return to the code after taking a break, or if it was used in a team, other people would also need to spend more effort on actually understanding every if statement, which is just unnecessarily burdensome. The second thing is about the math in this code. Some calculations for things such as positions are repeated dozens of times. I've learned that this can either be entirely avoided, or if that is not possible, the calculation should be put into a helper method. The last and most important for this project thing I have learned is that regardless of the other issues, which are in comparison minor, the whole way I have made everything so far is deeply flawed. As the keen-eyed among you will have likely noticed, this project is a website using P5.js for the entire functionality, excluding the scrolling background, which doesn't work for me anyways. Ever since I've made a fun little game with HTML and JavaScript, in the making of which I have learned a lot about how web games should be made, as making them entirely in P5.js is almost never a good idea. Best practices lesson aside, it's time for me to actually remake the codebase now. Because we have ventured away from the insanity line this time, it took like a day. Now yes, there is still some stuff missing, like the track settings not being displayed, same as the track names. This will come in due time. For now I have not implemented them yet, as they are too closely tied to actual functionality, which I have not made yet, as it also wasn't present in the previous codebase yet. To start on the topic, we need to figure out how the music should be represented in the logic. Start with the fact that we should have multiple tracks with different instruments. To represent this, I will start with a table. Inside, I will have yet another table to represent the track. A track consists of the instrument type, the frequency, and finally the notes, which are also represented by a table. Before any one of you tells me I should use objects, I have been there, done that, and do not wish to see that hell again. Finally, to describe notes in a table, I will have a last table which in first index has an integer value which denotates whether it is a pause, a starting note, or to be ignored because it is still a plain note. I'm fully aware this is not the correct way to denotate notes, but this is just what makes it easier for making tracks play in sync. Speaking of not the correct way, you know how I made fun of my fighter jet if statement earlier? Well, about that. But let me first explain. The concept is that the program chooses the previous note, and then to choose the next note can either go up or down by a certain number of notes. Whether it goes up or down is entirely random, whilst the amount by which it shifts is weighted to not be extreme. Then the final notable thing is that it uses this play note function to, as you guessed, play the note. Yes, this has been generated by an LLM because I did not want to spend 5 hours researching how to do it just for it to be worse. To make it not as bad, it's all on a local model, and it's the only thing I've used it for so far. Now for the first test. We can set the speed and volume. I have not yet gotten to implement the last slider. We can add and remove tracks. The properties menu currently does not have anything useful, but before I tackle that, I think it's time. It is time for you to hear the absolute beauty of musical composition that this algorithm produces. So get ready and brace for the wonderful harmonious sounds. Now, it's not the worst, but it is quite bad. I think the first thing I will want to do to improve this is add rests. But before I do that, I will be making the track settings UI slightly more functional. Now yes, this piece of HTML is an incomprehensible block of text, but it works. I can set the track name, which is purely cosmetic, the instrument, which can currently only be piano, the frequency, which isn't really implemented yet, the volume, which is also not implemented yet, and the tonality, which is implemented. To implement the volume, I just need to multiply the volume of the note by the song volume and the track volume. The last thing which remains to be implemented is frequency. The main way in which the frequency acts is by adding a way for the program to say that for every note with a lower frequency, the note will just be assumed to be still playing, whilst other notes can play something else. Implementing this was actually very easy and handled with just 2 if statements. Now after implementing rests, let's listen to it now. I'm sure now after these improvements we should be able to expect the immaculate sound of perfection. Okay, it's still not quite Mozart level yet, but I think I will leave it at that for today. I still have a ton of ideas on how this should be improved, such as by adding a multi-pass improvement mechanism, other scales than just the major scales, and maybe text-to-speech lyrics. So if you think that could be interesting and you want to see that, then please do tell me in the comments. A link to the website of this is left in the description in case you want to mess around with it as well. Furthermore, in the description is also a link to the code repository where it is hosted, in case you want to try it out yourself and maybe make some changes. And if you have any other ideas on how to improve this, then I would gladly hear them from you. If you have enjoyed listening to me ramble about code, then I invite you to watch the video on screen in which I make a similarly unprofessional upscaling algorithm. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will enjoy that one as well. If you however want to learn how to program yourself, then I would recommend watching the other video on screen which covers the universal basics of programming. As long as you're not trying to learn assembly, that video is going to help you at least a bit. So with that, I want to thank you for watching and hopefully see you in the next video.